Welcome everybody to the Ottawa PHP Meetup once more. My name is Savio. I'm one of the co-organizers here with Rick and Peter, which is not here today. I'm a software engineer for 13 years now. I'm very curious and I'm always learning because of that. So I have a bunch of presentations here already, given my curiosity, and I keep sharing because I think like this is the best way to learn, right? Like when you start to prepare something that shows to other people and to actually preparing yourself to answer questions, you actually end up gathering more information. So this is the way I like to keep improving, and I'm also always watching like presentations out there on YouTube or conferences. So I keep learning new stuff too. So yeah, this is me. And today I'm here to talk about aspect-oriented programming in PHP. I put /Laravel just because the example is on Laravel, but Laravel doesn't have support to AOP out of the box. It's just something that I'm going to present an example using a composer package for that. So let's move forward. It should be moving here. Okay. Sorry. What the slides are basically to cover what is AOP, which is aspect-oriented programming, some AOP vocabulary, because in order to understand properly what's happening in the code, you're going to get in touch with the vocabulary more often, and the examples. The examples are a list of applications that I just want to talk about. I'm not going to get into the weeds with them. I'm just going to get more into the weeds with the example that I bring here today. So let's go. What is aspect-oriented programming? So as you can see here, let's move this here. As you can see here, I bring two different diagrams representing similar stuff. Let's suppose that we have three different modules. Forgive myself, like I didn't have like a better presentation here for this image. This image is actually very old. I end up like looking for some newer image that was going to replace this. These slides are old actually, but yeah, I couldn't find better ones. So this example here, we have three different modules, and they represent three different concerns of our application. And when we are developing our application, being that procedural application or object-oriented application, you end up having these different functionalities that you have in your application that work together to accomplish something. And during the process, you end up having some of those functionalities that are actually happens to be inside the other ones. And an example of these functionalities is this concern here that actually happens in the module 1 and in the module 2. So this actually makes it harder to maintain the code. And it happens because, and actually there is a very good example, logging functionality, for example. Depending on how you solve the logging in your functionality, you will end up having this or that library or this or that driver that you use in your application, and then you're going to inject some code for this logging everywhere where you want the logging to happen. Or another example is caching, which actually logging and caching are the best possible examples for aspect-oriented programming. And actually aspect-oriented programming everywhere, like the basic functionalities, the basic concerns that they attack right out of the box, any library out there, any framework out there, are logging and cache. So when you have like logging, you end up having a situation like this, where you have different modules, the code is going to be all over the code, like everywhere, the logging. So everywhere you open the code and you see like log this or log that. And this actually reduces the maintainability of the code because at the end of the day, like depending on how much your application grows, you'll have so many code injected in so many places that your services or your modules, you can't reuse them properly in other applications. They are not decoupled anymore. So they become more and more rigid. And this is actually something that happens being your code procedural or being your code object-oriented. This is going to happen. And because of this, there is this concept of aspect orientation, which brings to this other side here. So they gave a name to these concerns that go through your application, and the name they gave is cross-cutting concerns, as you can see here. So the cross-cutting concerns now have a name, and by having a name, we can actually work with them, right? So what they do is that they define that these concerns, they actually do happen in many parts of our application. So we have to treat them differently. They are not simple concerns like any other that can be carried separately. They actually affect other modules. And because of that, aspect orientation works differently with them. So PHP doesn't have support to aspect orientation right out of the box with the language itself. So to work with aspect orientation with PHP, you have to work programmatically. You have to build an extension, or your framework or your website has to build from the ground up with this kind of support. And what you're going to do, like if you're going to follow some patterns that we have in other languages like Java, like C#, it is going to be working through annotations. So we're going to get on that later. So, okay. So this is what I was talking about when I was talking about procedural code, object-oriented code, and aspect-oriented code. So procedural are basically the code oriented by procedures. Object orientation is a little bit higher level because you're now organizing your code via objects. So these objects carry the procedures in a more consistent and understandable way to work with. And then the aspects, which attack some challenges of the object orientation programming. So yeah, just bring this to bring a better idea of how it works, or how is the concept, the idea behind this. So next slide is just a suggestion of mine. Because aspect orientation programming, like when I first heard of it a few years ago, I got like very excited about it. And I wanted to do everything oriented with aspect. And this is actually not wise. And I never had like the actual chance to use this in production. Thank God I had like teammates that actually gave me good advices to wait for a moment when I had a better understanding about aspect by playing around with code before putting this in a production environment that had thousands of clients work going every day. I'm saying that not because it wouldn't work, but because sometimes when we are working with others, tools that are not very known, like aspect orientation, they might increase the learning curve for new members in the team. And in that team, for example, we were 50 developers working in teams spread in different modules. And but like, imagine that we would apply aspect in one of those modules and try to convince other teams to apply it. And then they would hire new developers. They would all have to learn all this I'm sharing with you. And actually, aspect orientation is way bigger than this presentation. If you end up like searching for it, there's a book here that I have that I suggest to buy. which is this. Sorry, like this is a used book. This is why it's so dirty, but this is a book that I've been reading through the years about aspect orientation, and it talks more about the reasoning behind the construction. There's a whole chapter about building an example and then working with this example to a point where we can see the necessity of aspect orientation. And yeah, so avoid the situation where when you have a hammer, everything starts looking like a nail. So this is my suggestion here. Give like the proper treatment to each challenge you have out there. This is my suggestion. So let's move forward. Aspect orientation programming vocabulary. Cross-cutting concerns, which is those concerns that I just mentioned, the concerns that are spread in our application, different happens to be injected in different modules, increasing the difficulty to maintain your code and to reuse your code. Advices, which are these specific functionalities that happen to be spread in the cross-cutting concerns. So the advice is the actual concern of that the aspect is attacking. So for example, an example of the advice here, we have logging. Logging is like when you inject the functionality of logging in some module, you're actually injecting an advice there. If you're doing this with an aspect orientation. Point cut is the place where this advice is happening. So for example, we have a module for a shopping cart in our e-commerce, and we want to log when the shopping cart receives a product. The shopping cart class that we have in our code somewhere is and that specific method of adding a product is going to be the point cut where the advice of logging is going to be injected on. And the aspect is the other two together, the advice and the point cut. So the aspect is the actual strategy working, you know? So yeah, that's pretty much the vocabulary here. I try to bring the idea. If you start reading about it, you'll see that there's an entire philosophy behind each naming here. And there are other names also. But I just bring here the basic ones. You end up finding like proxies and many other names that people create out there. Just like any other science, right? They start creating patterns to attack different challenges that happen in the way. But with these four here, you are ready to start this path. So the sample applications that I bring here today. So this is the time where I put these in the browser again. The Go AOP is the first one, but is the one that I just mentioned a few minutes ago that is not working in the example that I had. I tried to see if there were some solution for that in the repository. I couldn't find. So, but I'm just going to mention if it happens that they end up solving this issue. And I put it in the first place because it was the most featured library for aspect-oriented programming that I found out there. And I really admired their work for a long time. And the way they do, and actually all these libraries that I bring here, the way they do is that they use PHP reflection. PHP reflection is the functionality of, with code, you read code. So you can actually read your source code and analyze and put together information about that code and do something about it. So the way they used the reflection was to actually create code cache. And when they were creating this cache of your source code, they were actually copying your code, adding the devices of the aspect orientation programming where you needed them. So every time you created an aspect, for example, an aspect of caching, and you want to cache everything that comes on a specific point of your application, like report class. Like you have a class called report and a method called generate. And you want to, every time the user, any other part of the application calls that method, you want this advice of caching to happen in that method. The way they do in this Go AOP library is that they rewrite this class that is going to be affected by the aspect, and they put their code, that advice, where you wanted that. So they are actually rewriting your code in a cache, so the code would run the way it needed. One thing I noticed that is fading right now is that when they are rewriting the code in the cache, the code comes a little messed. So I think they changed something that is incompatible with the new Laravel, the latest version of the Laravel that they give support to, which is Laravel's actually the PHP version. I mean, the PHP version that they give support to, which is PHP 7.2 forward. So actually, the repository is this one. This is actually their bridge, so you can work in Laravel using it. Here is all their documentation. And if you go to the Go AOP organization on GitHub, you'll see all they have. Like they have support for Zend Framework 2, for Symfony, for Laravel. And here is the framework if you want to build from the ground up, which explains all the process of creating like the application container, everything. So yeah, this is the first one that I wanted to mention. It's not working right now. So if someone like out there try and can make it work, please let me know. I will try it later. I will keep like revisiting it because I really like their work there. The other framework that I'm bringing here to talk about is Swift. Swift is a Chinese project. The previous one was a Russian project. The Swift is a Chinese one. Swift is built on top of the PHP extension called Swol. I talked about Swol in my last presentation, which is in our website and our YouTube channel. The presentation is there. And the presentation was talking about how to build real-time applications using PHP and Swol without Node.js or any other real-time ready tool out there, using just PHP. And Swol is actually an entire framework that allows us to work differently with PHP. So we can work with multitasking with PHP, we can coroutine, we can build specific different interface, actually not interfaces, but you can use better the resources of the machine you have. So for example, when you're working, just to build like a small idea here of the advantage of Swol, to see why Swift is very interesting. When you are working with the usual PHP stack, which is going to be PHP and Nginx, what happens is that Nginx can use different processes in your machine to use better your resources. But Nginx sets the number of processes that you can use by a configuration. So you can say like 10 or 15. They don't dynamically increase up. I might be wrong, don't quote me on that, but until the point where I read about, they don't have a dynamic way to do that. There might be tools to do that, right? But I tried to do that on some projects in the past. I couldn't, so I'm bringing this information here. And the way it's going to work because of that is that, let's suppose that you separate, actually determine that Nginx can work with 10 processes. Every request is going to be like, let's suppose that 10 clients are accessing your project at the same time. If you inspect the processes in your machine, you'll see 10 processes happening with Nginx, but all of them will be stuck with the bottleneck of the PHP FPM, which is the PHP that handles the CGI. And the limitation there is that PHP is a single task language. So it's only going to execute one of those requests at a time. And it doesn't matter if Nginx can handle multiple processes, can work with multiple processes. PHP in the background is going to do only one per time. And you can see like how this avoids scalability. PHP is very fast. This is not actually a concern for the majority of the websites out there, but is a concern depending on how important the performance is for specific technologies or projects. So, and Suo actually allows a way better benchmark because it allows for the PHP that is in the other side to create one process for each task that is receiving. So it stops being this bottleneck of this stack, you know? And the best part is that you don't need Nginx anymore. Suo is a ready server, actually production ready server. So you can use for HTTP, serve your own application with HTTP server. It's all in the other top. So Suoft is built on top of the Suo extension. And because of that is a microservice coroutine framework for building high performance web systems, APIs, middlewares, and basic service. Yeah, this is why what is Suoft is for. And this is very interesting, actually. I would maybe ask one of you out there to access this URL. As you can see, I'm using a VPN here. And the reason that of me using VPN is because from my internet at my home, I live in Ontario, I couldn't access this address. I'm using VPN because I was just checking if all the URLs were working before this meeting, and I'm still like not having access to this URL directly. So it's very interesting. So I put here just to mention the aspect orientation in this library. They bring like aspect orientation right out of the box, and actually it's not out of the box. It's not just available. If you're going to work with Swift, you have to use aspects. So I just put here some part of the code that is actually using aspects. Actually, all the code use aspects, but I just put some here prepared, which is this, for example. They specify that this is an aspect, so calc exec time aspect. So this is actually working before some functionality, and this is their point cut. They call it point bean because they have like this special name in the Swift context, which is bean. So they call it point bean, but in the aspect-oriented programming vocabulary, this is the point cut, and they are saying that this is going to happen in this class here, and it's going to happen before whatever method you're going to call it. And then let's see, where is this here? Oh, it's not here. Where is it? Completable. Never mind then. Yeah, I'm not going to get into the weeds with this framework here. I never really dig enough to know all the details. So just sharing with you that this framework uses aspects. So the other one, actually, yeah, now is the example that I bring here today. And the example is actually using Laravel, and this is the library, the composer package that I bring here, Laravel aspect. And all of these will be available for you in the YouTube video and in our website of the PHP Meetup. So this library here is very well maintained. They maintain like in basically all the main used versions of Laravel. They support almost every programming stack of our PHP and Laravel out there. And as you can see, they have like all the documentations for installation and all. It has some limitations, and I'm going to cover that later. I built this. I put in GitHub, like this is an example. I was not going to put it available, but I decided to, just because I think someone might want to see, because I have a very interesting aspect here, which is I was asking myself when I was reading about this library again, if I could build my own custom aspect. And after reading their source code, I ended up finding that it was actually very easy. And in this code here, I ended up building one custom aspect. It's not a good example, actually, because it's a little dummy to use aspects for the specific functionality that I built this custom aspect for. I just want to show like how it works and how it is possible with this library. So let's go there in the code. Is it in a good size, the font, for you to read? Someone please say something. Hello?
It's readable for me.
Yes.
Please? Okay. So here in the Laravel application, you have this app directory, which is the directory that takes care of the entire application. And there, when you install, let me go there again. When you install this library here, it actually installs, like you have a command to publish the modules, use provider. Yes. You have this command here that actually publish the out-of-the-box modules for you. When you install this library, you don't need to install those modules. You can run this code to install the modules for you. If you decide not to, you are going to need to build a custom module like the one I'm going to show you now. But they have like a bunch of modules that help you with almost every concern of aspect orientation right now. So for example, they have, they all work via annotations. Actually, this might be a good moment to go here. All these frameworks that I talked about on PHP, to work with aspect, they use doctrine annotations. So doctrine annotations is this package here, which you can install via Composer. And doctrine annotation is actually a library that allows you, by using reflection, to read the doc blocks of your code and to do something about it. So in the documentation here, you'll see, for example, you have an annotation like this in your code, and then you can create a class using that annotation. So for example, the annotation is my annotation, for example, and you pass a property and you pass a value there. So in your class, when you run this library, it's going to grab that annotation, it's going to instantiate a final class, or a class with the same name. It's going to populate the properties that you set there, and then you will have all of this available to do something with it. So this is what this doctrine annotation library is for. So all of those, they use this because this, as I said before, is the main strategy to use aspects in any other language out there, like C#, Java, any other. So they are doing on PHP using this library. That makes it very easy, actually. And then this library here to use aspect, they are built on this library is built on top of the doctrine annotation library, and this is how they do. For example, they have this transactional, which is actually a module, and then you can say what the module, what is going to happen to that method, like via this annotation. And then you have like some in another class in your code. In this case, in the library, they come within the library. It's not going to be in your app directory. They say what is going to happen to that specific part of the code depending on what parameters you're passing here. So they have already, like, out of the box, the cache module where you have all these options, the driver, lifetime, cache name, everything. They have cache evict, cache, like almost everything. You can come here later and check. Like they already have the loggable, for example, which is for the logging purpose. And if you go in the code, they when you install their modules, their modules are installed here. So when you run those that publish PHP artisan code command, this modules directory shows up in your apps directory, and all the modules shows up here, and then you can use them right out of the box. So for example, if I create a route, let's create a route. Oh, and now it comes the limitation of this library. The first limitation, which doesn't happen to that Go AOP library that I was mentioning. The first limitation is that to work with aspects on Laravel with this library, the class that you want to interfere with your aspect has to be instantiated using your application container. So if you're not instantiating your class via application container, Laravel application container, the aspect is not going to work. So this is the first limitation. So as let me show you what I'm talking about here. I have a controller that I prepared for this. So as you can see right here, I have this controller is actually a resource, which is the order resource. It's just for example purpose. And I have the show, actually, is this the one? Oh, yeah, is this the one? Oh, actually, yeah, I have the order repository. So I go in the order repository. And in the order repository, I have the get order. Yep. And where is my, okay. And here is my aspect, Acme. This is actually my custom aspect. To start with this example, I'm going to avoid using my aspect, and I'm going to use the loggable, which comes right out of the box. So if I put it here like this, if I'm not wrong, and this is very risky what I'm doing right now because this is a live presentation. If I reload this page here, actually not if I reload this page, but if I call the order, let's get the route, the web route. No, not here. This is just like some me playing around. Okay, orders is a resource, perfect. And that is happening in the show, so I need an ID. So let's check the database if I have any order. No, I don't. So I'm going in the code, and I'm going to prepare an order. I'm going to use PHP Tinker, Artisan Tinker. It should be working. So I have some code failing. Okay, loggable is creating a problem there. Let's comment it out right now, just for me to be able to run that code, and then we are going to see what's there. What's happening here? Okay, loggable. Okay, okay, actually, sorry. Annotation, get order was never imported. Oh, yes, I never imported, sorry. So, and this is the second limitation that I was going to talk about this library, which is you have to, every time you change your code, you have to come here and run this command to clear cache. When you change, not to change your code, but you change the aspect. So you have to run this. And this is also failing, which is very concerning. What is actually failing first? Repository again. Did I remove it from there? Okay, let me do something apart. Oh. Cache clear. I was testing this right before this presentation. Why is it failing? It's still there. I think my cache might not be working properly. Let's put a 777 into storage. Okay, this is a little bit concerning. Notation exception. Yeah, this is expected. What might be missing? So just to get this out of the actual issue, let me clear this because I want to show logs. Let's load the loggable. So let's find the loggable. Yeah, here is the loggable address in the namespace. There it is. It was complaining. It shouldn't complain, right? So let's see. It is still complaining. So probably I have some. Let me down auto load. Let me do everything that I can. Oh. Oh. You can install the package right here. Oh, no, it's not going to be this, just in case. Yeah, like, let me see if I'm running the wrong command, which might be possible, right? Where are the commands to clear cache? Okay, here. Yeah, it should be there. Forgive my Mac OS. I don't know if there is any Mac OS faster than this, but this happens often with me. There is some problem here that I don't know post auto load. Aspect service provider. Okay, I'm seeing it here. Okay. Ah, did I not register the aspect provider? But it should be installed right out of the box. Maybe I didn't put in the repository. So install with this. Okay. Oh, this is killing me. Let's close this. Let me see the options I have. Well, I probably missed something. This is very concerning. So let me do critical attempt here. I'm going to clone again because probably I met something there. Laravel, AOP, example 2. I think we're still in a good time. It should be 15 minutes. Okay, oh, actually not there. So composer install. I'm going to close and here's going just to open there. Okay. And now that installed, to PHP artisan serve, which is the one that I'm using. I'm just going to also copy the env from the other, which has some important credentials for my local database. Okay. And now I should be good. Just it's loading perfectly. Yep. So let's see. That's is in the repository. So let's call that repo. Actually, let's create an order. Artisan Tinker. Perfect. I don't know what I messed there. Let's create one order. Oh, I have more than one class called order. Now I have an order. If I go there, there it is my order. And now I can get the order using orders one. Let me just confirm. At the I'm not putting behind any security. Yes, actually, there is an API behind because it's in the API file. So there it is. It's actually going to be presented there in Postman, but it's not needed right now. So I have my order coming in the endpoint. So actually, it's a good option because this presentation here is not giving me the option to show. Probably, did I set the header? In the resource, yeah, I thought that it would, never mind. So let's see on Postman. Let's go there and create. It's very slow. Okay, so HTTP localhost API orders one. So when I send this, I will receive a JSON response. Oh, not like this, 8,000. Here it is. So as you can see, and this is going to be what the result. And the total is 1021, is an integer. So the total I'm keeping as an integer just because I end up finding by the hard manner a while ago that it's not wise to use float format for currencies. And this is my suggestion to you. Some float calculations are not exact. So if you want to keep currency in your database using PHP and MySQL, I would suggest you to use integers, instead. And here in the repository, so let's go order repository. I have my Acme. Now let's try to load the loggable again. Oh, actually, it's not in the same directory. We have to find again the address of the loggable. Here it is. And then we replace. Let's just check the logs to see if they are empty for us to be able to check. Oh, okay. There was a log there. Okay, so now let's see if I broke the code again. I broke the code again. There's something wrong with that. Yeah, there's something wrong with this loggable instantiation here. I won't spend time like reviewing it. Let's see. Yeah, the code is back again. So let's go to the Acme annotation. The way it works is like this. If we go to the other modules, you'll have these modules here. And the loggable should be able to work right out of the box. Oh, I think I know what it is. It's because I forgot this other limit. This is actually another limitation. Remember when I was actually talking about at this point here, actually in the vocabulary, point cut. The point cut is in aspect orientation is where you want the code to behave, where you want the advice to interfere in the code. So I forgot the point cut in the loggable moment. So in the module, you have to go here and say where you want it to happen. So probably this was the issue. I'm not going to play around with this just because I'm a little afraid of this class. Let me just go to what I wanted, and then we can just check if this is going to work as expected. So this is my custom module that I created. So I just copied that code, and I gave my own names, and I did some extra work. And this is something that you won't see right here because they are extending this packageable cache module, which is inside the library. So what I did here is instead of extending from some code there, for example, you can, this is here. If you go there, actually here, so it's not indexing. Okay, so if you go in the library, you'll see a bunch of modules that they actually extend. Their modules that they create in our files in our module directory. They extend from. So if you go there, modules, you'll see all these actually abstract modules. And here they are. They are not actually abstract, but they have this point cut registration here. So, and this point cut registration is actually what is uses the other thing that we need in order to have our custom aspect, which is this custom aspect directory that I created. So I wouldn't keep like this. This is something that I did just to play around. So I would create like aspect directory and put like this custom aspect inside of it in order to have like other aspects if I need it. And inside that custom aspect, you're going to create your point cut, which is the point cut. And now we go here, that is registered right here. And then in the point cut, you actually say which annotation you're going to expect to find in the point cut. So for example, if at your point cut, you're expecting to see orders customization annotation, here is where you're going to say like, I'm expecting to see this annotation there. Remember that this annotation is a doctrine annotations component. So it's going to be exactly this. So this is what you're going to put here as the annotation. You're going to say which class, and then you configure. The configuration for the point cut is that you're going to also choose the interceptor. The interceptor here is the actual code for what is going to happen in that point cut, is our advice. So the interceptor, actually the annotation that I put here, you can find it in the annotations directory. And this is the annotation. I put like before class, before method. I'm not using this. I just put it here to see if they were going to get populated, and they did. But the only thing that you actually need is this here, the name. So Once that is there, you have the actual interceptor, and the interceptor carries the behavior that you want to inject in every point cut that you want this to happen. So I just copied this from the other interceptors they have, so they come with this. I didn't dig enough to actually see what they are doing in the background. I just customized what I wanted, which is the invoke method. And the fact that they are using the invoke method is because somewhere in the code, the invoke is like a magic method, right? So somewhere in the code, they are calling this class, this instance, as a function. So probably you'll be able to pass a closure, for example, because it happens in invoke method, right? So here, what I'm doing is I'm getting the arguments from the invocation. The invocation is the parameter. And this invocation actually carries all the information that you have available with this doctrine annotations class, which is basically the information that you get from the PHP reflection features. So now I get the arguments from the invocation. I parse them because they give back an arrayable object. Arrayable object is an object that you can access like an array, but it's not an array, right? So you can compare, you can do everything, but it's not an array. So if you just var dump it, you won't see the data. This is something. So moving further, yeah, I get like the parameters from these arguments, and then the proceed in the invocation is where you choose to execute the code from the function. So for example, if I do something here, for example, echo test, I'm going to be doing before the method. If I do this instead of here, I'm going to be doing after the point cut. Actually, not the method, point cut. Let's call it like this. So this is how what I'm doing. This is how you're going to customize the behavior of the point cut. So here, as you can see, I proceed with the code. I gather the information before, I proceed with the code, and then I do something with the output of that class, and then I return. So what I'm doing is I let the class, the point cut happens, I do something with the output, and I give back this changed output. So this is what's happening right there. So if you go to the order repository, get order method, I'm just finding the object in the database, and I'm returning it. So the return, the response from the return from this method is the order, right? So in my interceptor, I'm just getting the order. So we could do something like this to keep this more readable, right? And yeah, order is already there. So we could do this to show like, okay, we are expecting an order here. We could even validate if there was an order or not, because if we are passing an invalid ID, what we are going to get is a null, and this might break the code. But I'm not intending to build like a not failable code here. I get the order, I process it with like a custom method here that is going to do something with it, and then I return. What I'm doing here is not something that is worthy to be done via aspect. I just didn't have a good example because the class, this component, this package comes with all the good examples right out of the box. So I just wanted to show how to build your own custom aspect. And this is actually a good explanation of how all these components, all these modules work in the background. The difference is that all these classes that you're seeing here is already coming with the package. So what I'm doing here in this example is that I'm getting the value. So if you go there and see the output, you'll see that I'm bringing the total, which is expected to be a value, like a currency. I'm not parsing it just know that. So what I'm going to do with that aspect is actually I'm process tax for a province. And then what I'm doing is I created a configuration file for province taxes just for this purpose. So if you go there, you'll find like province taxes. And then I'm saying that Ontario has like 10% of taxes. So here I'm going to get this province tax if it exists in the arguments array. Okay. So if you, when we are calling it, I'm passing the arguments that I'm gathering here. And if there is a province in passing with the API call, I'm going to process it. If not, I'm going to show the original value. This is what I'm doing here. So then I calculate, I round it, I parse as an integer, and I return. So if you go here, you'll see that I'm returning 1021. If I go here and pass, actually I can do it right here, right? Province, Ontario. You'll see that instead of 1021, it's going to be 1021 plus 10%. Oh, it failed. And this kills me. Oh, okay. I know exactly what it is. It's because I didn't specify the point cut in the aspect. So I go here. In the classes, I actually using Acme service somewhere. I don't have it. Is this? No, where is this being called? Where else I'm calling, oh, not this. Where else I'm calling Acme service? Commented. Yeah. Okay, here, which is the loggable module. Okay. Yeah, that's it. So instead of 1021, it's going to be 1021 plus 10% rounded up. So this is what I'm getting here. Forgive me that Acme service was actually a service that I was playing around before this. This is the parsed one. If I just hide these parameters and send again, I'm going to get the original value. So this is how the aspect is interfering with the code. And you can do actually anything you want. So in the interceptor, you're going to do whatever you want with this point. And you can do this everywhere. You can intercept controllers, kernel classes, you can interfere everywhere. As long as you make sure that that part that you are actually interfering on is being instantiated via application container. So probably kernel is not going to be possible. So yeah, that's pretty much how it works in the background. So probably now is a good moment to use the log, now that I guess that I know the issue. So I just have to put this class in the loggable module as a point cut. Oh, actually, it's not repositories, it's for the repository. Okay. So now I'm going to register here, which is the first step. And then I'm going to instantiate this loggable there. So for the repository, I don't know if I'm already logging. Let me just check it there. Interceptor, and I'm logging. No, I'm not logging. And let me see if there is any log already, because I think I accessed the home page again. In the home page, I was playing around with it, and there was a log there. Okay, the error logs. So now I'm going to, in the order repository, I'm going to add the loggable. Let's see if it works. If it doesn't work, I'm just going to leave it like this. Just copy how they are saying that we should use it like. or the repository. Oh. Here, loggable. Loggable. Now, when I run this, let's check the log right there. So all the information I'm logging and where it happened. So yeah, the issue was just that Acme service. So that's pretty much what I came here today to present. This is the aspect orientation programming. Now I think is a good time for questions if there is any. I'm going to stop sharing here.